Father, I've finally done it. I've translated the ancient text you gave me from Sanskrit to medieval Latin, just like you taught me. It was easier than I thought once I figured out how to compensate for the language idiom usage. You know, Father, we Uriartes really are smarties.
Hey kids, and welcome to this episode of Mr. Uriarte, You're Smarty. Let's get started. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to subtract with borrowing and without borrowing. So let's get started. Okay, first things first, we're going to practice subtracting without borrowing. So basically, with subtracting without borrowing, the bigger number is always going to be on top. Actually, when we're subtracting, the bigger number is always going to be on top, but in this case, all the numbers are bigger. Let me show you. So if we have 2,864 minus 1,722. Let me fix that. You notice how I have the columns all lined up perfectly. The ones columns are lined up, the tens column, the 100s, and the 1,000 columns are all lined up nice and neat. You want to make sure you keep your work neat, especially later on. You don't want it all crunched up too close together. Okay, now, just like with subtracting, we're going to start at the right. Just like with adding, we're going to start at the right and move to the left. Now, this one's going to have no borrowing at all. We're not going to go and borrow. So that means, if you notice, every digit on our top number is larger than on the bottom. So, we're going to subtract like we normally would. Starting on our right, we're going to start with 4 take away 2. 4 take away 2 is 2. Let's move on to the tens column. 6 take away 2. 6 take away 2 is 4. I'm putting it right underneath the tens column that I was just working in. Moving over to the hundreds. 8 take away 7. 8 take away 7 is 1. So we have to put our answer right in the 100s column. 1. Then we have, moving over to the thousands column, we have 2 take away 1, which is 1. We line it up with our thousands column. So we have our answers lined up nice and straight with the columns we were subtracting them from. So 2,864 minus 1,722 is 1,142. Okay, that's subtracting without borrowing. Let's try now subtracting with borrowing. That's where we have to go and borrow from the number beside us so we can subtract the number we're using. So let me try 28 minus 19. Now you notice I made my numbers nice and big, they're not crunched together, and I have lots of space for working. So, again, starting at the right, moving over to the left. 8 minus 9. Well, if I hold up 8 fingers, I can't take 9 fingers away. I just can't do it. So I need to go over to my neighbor in the tens column and borrow from them. So I'm going to go knock on my neighbor's door, which is a 2. And I'm going to take one number away from my 2. So if I take one number away from my 2, that changes this number, and it's no longer a 2. It's now, if I take 1 away from 2, it's 1. So, the 1 that I took away from the 2, I'm going to place it in front of the 8. So now, I have 18 take away 9. 18 take away 9 is 9. And I'm going to put that answer right underneath the ones column. Alright, now, moving over like we normally do to the tens column. Now it's not 2 take away 1, because remember we've changed that 2 into a 1 when we borrowed from there. So it's now 1 take away 1, which is 0. And I can put that 0 in right underneath in the tens column. Alright, that's borrowing. We're going to try 2 more with borrowing just to practice. And we're going to make them a 3-digit number. So I'm going to get started. We're going to have 754 minus 668. All right, so we're going to get started. Starting on the right, I'm going to start with the ones column. 4 take away 8. I can't do 4 take away 8. So I have to go over to my neighbor and borrow in the next column. So in the tens column, my neighbor's a 5. So I'm going to take 1 away from that 5. Taking 1 away from 5 will now turn that 5 into a 4. I'm going to put the 4 nice and neat right beside the 5. Now the 1 I take away goes in front of the 4, making it 14 now. 14 take away 8 is 6. I'm going to put that 6 in the ones column. Okay, moving across. It's not 5 take away 6, it's 4 take away 6. I can't do 4 take away 6, so I have to go and borrow from my neighbor. In this case, I'm now borrowing from the 100s column. So I'm borrowing from the 7. So I'm going over and taking 1 away from the 7, turning that 7 into 6. In this 1 that I borrowed from the 7, I put in front of the 4. So it's now 14 take away 6. All right, and 14 take away 6 is 8. Okay, now moving over to the 100s column, it's not 7 take away 6, it's 6 take away 6, which is 0. So 754 take away 668 is 86. Let's try one more. This one's going to be a little different. 405 minus 357. All right, so I've lined them up. They're perfectly lined up, the ones, tens, and hundreds. So this is what I'm going to do. Starting over here and moving over, 5 take away 7, I can't do. So I need to go over to my next number. But my next number is a 0. I can't take 1 away from 0. I just can't do it. So what do? I go to my next neighbor in the 100s column, the 4. So I move over to my next neighbor, which is a 4, and I take 1 away from the 4. Taking 1 away from 4 will turn my 4 into a 3. All right, this is where it gets a little tricky. The 1 that I took away from the 4 now goes in front of the 0, making that 0 a 10. So it's 10 take away 5. But remember, we're borrowing over here. So now that this neighbor is 10, I can borrow from him now. So I'm going to borrow, making that 10 into a 9. So I took 1 away from the 10, making it a 9. So now, the 1 that I took away from the 9, I put in front of the 5, making it 15 minus 7. And 15 minus 7 is 8. Now, 9 take away 5 is 4. And 3 take away 3 is 0. Now, I could write in 0, but since it's 0, I can also leave it blank and just not even bring it down. All right, you guys ready? It's time for show what you know. You need to go and you need to show someone what you just learned. You need to practice. You need to rewind and pause and try practicing as much as you can until you get a hang of it. So, when you come back to school, you're going to have some work to do. And I'm going to show you that work right now.
Okay, so let's bring these 4 columns of subtraction problems ready for next class. Some are with borrowing, some are without borrowing. Go back, rewind, practice, and practice. See you in class.
Go color, go color, go color. Color. Oh.